So the first major signing of this offseason has already occurred, and it is Josh Naylor re-signing with the Seattle Mariners. Now, I think out of all landing spots, the Mariners were probably the most likely for Josh Naylor, just being a team that it seemed like Josh Naylor really did enjoy playing for, who made a deep playoff run with, and who kind of feels like he deserves and the city deserves to be able to run it back with Seattle for another season. And the other thing is the Seattle fan base really did embrace Josh Naylor. They seem to love having him as an addition to that lineup, in the latter part of this past season. So really just both sides of the equation made sense, and to me that's why it's not too surprising that we did see Josh Naylor sign this contract. So when you look at the terms of this, we have a 5-year and what's reported to be a $92.5 million contract. And to me, I thought Josh would get a little bit more money than that. At first glance, to me, it seems like a pretty team-friendly deal. And then when you lump in the fact that he does have a full no-trade clause throughout this contract, I think it really does become and will become a team-friendly deal for the Mariners that, maybe Josh just really wanted to continue to play there, and that's why he signed it. Maybe he just didn't want to, continue to test free agency, and he just wanted to sign and get it over with. Whatever the case may be, I definitely think this is a good contract for the Mariners. But if you're looking at it from Josh's perspective, I think it also makes some sense. He was able to get a 5-year contract, and for a guy who does have some weight issues, you kind of never know with guys like that, and their ability to continue to play late into their 30s. Josh is a very, very good first baseman right now, though, and I think for the next 5 years, for sure, he'll be able to provide good first base and power hitting for the Mariners. That said, I actually do have a few takeaways from only one free agency signing so far this offseason. First and foremost, I think we're going to see a couple of guys follow suit with the signing back to the team they were previously playing on. And to me, the two main guys that are going to follow suit quickly are Bo Bichette and Kyle Schwarber. I think both of these guys are very likely to, for Bo Bichette, play for the Blue Jays, and for Kyle Schwarber to continue to play for the Phillies. Similarly to Josh, both of these guys seem to love playing for the teams that they are currently or were previously playing for, and just don't seem like they have any interest in relocating at this point in their career. Also, both of their teams want to compete next season, and I think they could really use these guys coming back for, at least another season to a couple of seasons. So to me, keep an eye out for that over the next week or two. I think both of those guys will re-sign for their teams coming up shortly. Now, the second takeaway I have actually also has to do with other free agents on the market, specifically guys who do play the first base position. After this signing, I've heard a lot about maybe potential smaller deals for guys like Pete Alonso and maybe even Cody Bellinger, who does play some first baseman, but definitely also guys like Ryan O'Hearn. But my takeaway is actually the opposite. I think now that there's one big piece out of the free agency market, I think guys like these are going to have the opportunity to get even bigger contracts the longer they push this thing for teams who really need to fill that first base position and want to go out there and compete for a World Series next season. A prime example of this would be Pete Alonso potentially returning to the Mets. I think now Pete Alonso has more leverage than ever to demand a really big contract from the Mets organization. For guys like Bellinger and O'Hearn, I think they're less likely to return to their teams, but I do think they are more likely now to get some more money, in a pretty weak free agency class for the first base position. And now for my last takeaway. This one to me is honestly the most interesting takeaway because it has to do with something that we really have no idea what it's going to play out like, and we have no idea what to expect. But one of the things we've heard a lot so far in the short stint of an offseason up to this point is that we're not sure how willing teams are going to be to sign players to long-term contracts with this potential shutdown looming in the near future. Now, me personally, I was never someone who actually believed that teams are going to be more hesitant to sign guys to long-term contracts because of that. To me, I think the teams that are willing to sign players to long-term contracts are going to do so anyway, and the teams who are more traditionally not willing to sign players to those longer, bigger contracts are probably going to continue to do what they always have done and not sign those players. So I just don't see a real big change coming because of the potential for a shutdown. Now, maybe there are a couple teams throughout the league who are more willing to sign those longer term contracts that maybe now will be like, maybe we should just kick that can down the road a year or two and see how the potential work stoppage, the situation does play out as a whole before we get ourselves locked into, you know, any long-term contracts. Now, it still is really early in the free agency days. As we all know, free agency kind of is a slow burn in the MLB. These things will start to build on each other as time goes on, but it does take a little bit. That said, make sure you guys hit the subscribe button to stay tuned. I have a lot more free agency content coming to you guys as we get more updates and things come out to us. If you did enjoy today's video though, hit a like, and I will see you all in the next video. Bye-bye.